Margaret agus fáilte wrote Ara, and I too just want to pause to remember Jennifer Poole and Valerie, and I want to welcome both Joe and Jason here and David, and thank you for all the work that you've done. It's really important that this legislation, and I thank Fianna Fáil senators as well and the TDs for bringing this forward. It's a very important piece of legislation, and as a Labour Party we're very happy to support it as well. And I think the idea at the heart of this bill is a simple one. People should have the chance to know if their partner has a history of domestic violence, and I think we can all agree that this is a very worthy and sensible aim. The question is, how do we do that in the most effective and safe and possible way? And there have been different approaches to this in different jurisdictions, and I just want to talk briefly about, in the UK, about Clare's Law, put in place a domestic violence disclosure scheme allowing police to both disclose and proactively inform people of their partner's relevant past convictions. The new register of domestic violence under this bill before us today, which we welcome, is different from the UK, and it's vital, but it's vital that we tease this out to make sure what the government is doing here is the best way forward. And there are risks inherent in both models, and given what the government is proposing here is reasonably novel, but we need to make sure that we've got it right, and I'm delighted that we can have this opportunity to speak about this here. Domestic violence disclosure schemes like Clare's Law have a couple of significant drawbacks. They rely on police providing the information, and that carries the possibility of delays. Reporting in the UK shows many women waiting hundreds of days for disclosures to be made. For women in dangerous situations, this is obviously too late. They also typically require direct contact with police to initiate the process. Sometimes that can pose a barrier for vulnerable women, particularly those from marginalised communities. The efficacy of those under domestic violence disclosure schemes has been questioned, and with that in mind, I understand and I commend you, Minister, for choosing a different approach here. But there are also questions around the idea of a public register too, and I would like to hear reassurances from you that these have been accounted for. The information to be included on the register is by definition limited in nature, only relating to a serious conviction. But of course, the absence of information shouldn't necessarily mean an absence of concern. If a person is concerned enough to consult the register in the first place, how do we make sure that if they find their partner or prospective partner is enlisted, that they don't take a false sense of security from that? We need to communicate, be careful to communicate that if something feels wrong, it probably is wrong, and the clear register doesn't necessarily mean that no threat is posed. The need for a victim's consent is in the legislation for good reason, but could be a double-edged sword if victims come under pressure not to consent. These are vulnerable people who have been subjected, in most cases, to coercion, manipulation and violence, and we need to make sure that the supports are in place to allow them to safely and make an independent and informed decision. And on that, I just want to give a shout out to the Safe to Call initiative that is happening with DVAS, and in my own area in Sligo, that the first Safe to Call centre in Ballymote Family Resource Centre, where all staff are trained up to recognise if someone is a victim or has experienced domestic violence and coercive control. But I suppose, just to finish, I just want to say that this isn't a silver bullet. We know this is the start, and I think it's just one part of it, and under the Istanbul Convention, we're still not meeting our obligations. And unfortunately, I'm in a county of 9 counties where there still isn't a refuge. And all the surrounding counties around me, there's Sligo, Leitrim, Longford, Cavan, Roscommon. There's no domestic violence refuge in any of these counties. And I think that's something, Minister, that I know that you can help address. So we know that ambition is clear, or we need to have more ambition around this. And I think as well, unfortunately, I'm hearing stories as well where judges are around protection and safety orders, that judges are ruling in favour of men, and that there is an undermining of women. And I think that's something that we hope that we can continue to discuss here. And that's from me working with Women's Aid and with DVAS. So I hope that we can continue this conversation. But I welcome the bill. We support it, and thank you for bringing it forward.